Hi, this is New Time on Silkway TV channel. We introduce you with the most visible news and important events that happened throughout this week in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. More details on politics, economy, social and cultural life with opinions from the most recognizable experts of Kazakhstan and the world. I'm Dorian Isagulov, and this is what you'll see today. Beyond competition, US seeks long-term partnership with Kazakhstan. An exclusive interview with US Chargé d'Affaires to Kazakhstan Deborah Robinson on trade, tariffs and investment. The European Union is increasing defense spending. Who's ready to pour money into the military, and for whom will it become a heavy burden? Kazakhstan celebrated Unity Day, the story of one American family that now calls this country home. President of Kazakhstan Kassym-Jomart Tokayev has extended his congratulations to newly elected Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney following the Liberal Party's victory in the federal elections. In his official message, President Tokayev emphasized the value Kazakhstan places on its multifaceted partnership with Canada, highlighting cooperation across key sectors such as economy, energy, agriculture and education. Mark Carney previously served as Governor of the Bank of Canada and later of the Bank of England. He is expected to announce the formation of a new cabinet in the coming weeks. The new government and its head will be taking charge at a tricky time of intensified trade tensions with its neighbor, the United States. Earlier this week, Kazakhstan's President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev spoke by phone with Luxembourg's Prime Minister Luc Frieden. According to the presidential office in Astana, the conversation focused on deepening ties in key sectors, from energy and finance to digital innovation. Both leaders also underscored the importance of expanding cooperation with the European Union and the Benelux region. 5 countries, one voice. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Turkmenistan are increasingly presenting a united front on the global stage. Through the now well-known C5+ format, Central Asia's 5 nations are engaging with major powers not separately but as a group. This model of regional cooperation was first proposed by Japan back in 2004, but it's only in recent years that the format has gained real momentum. Amid major geopolitical shifts from the US withdrawal from Afghanistan to the war in Ukraine, the region is becoming a more assertive player in international affairs. But does this growing presence mean that the 5 are truly ready to speak with one voice, especially when the stakes are high? That's the question we explore in our next report. The C5+ format first emerged in the early 2000s, but it's in the recent years that it has truly come into its own. At its heart are high-level meetings between the 5 Central Asian nations and major global powers including the United States, the European Union, China and the Gulf states. The momentum comes from both sides. Leading world powers increasingly recognize that it's more effective to engage with the region as a whole than with each country individually, says Janibek Arınov, PhD in International Relations and Assistant Professor at Nazarbayev University. By acting as a single bloc with a combined market of over 75 million people, Central Asia presents itself as a far more attractive partner for trade and investment.
The format started back years ago with Japan offering this kind of format, and later the European Union probably was the most consistent external actor promoting the C5+1 format. So the idea is very simple. Central Asian countries alone, 5 Central Asian countries alone, they are quite small in terms of economy, in terms of their political significance. And in that kind of context, most of the external actors want to have a kind of broader cooperation with the entire region. So, right, when you combine the economies of the 5 Central Asian countries, it's a kind of different level.
And the numbers speak for themselves. According to the EBRD, the combined GDP of Central Asian countries surpassed $500 billion in 2024. Over the past 2 years, C5+1 summits have been held with the United States, the European Union, China and the Gulf states. These meetings have led to new initiatives in logistics, green energy, education, security and water management. But the drive for cooperation isn't coming from external partners alone. Increasingly, the initiative is being led by the region itself. The challenges Central Asia faces, from water management to energy exchange, are complex and transboundary by nature. Addressing them effectively requires a coordinated regional approach.
When you have these 5 Central Asian countries and they come together with China, with EU, with United States, Russia, Gulf states, doesn't matter, and then discuss a kind of a bigger issue. So that's the core idea. And then you're absolutely right. In the last 3 or 4 years, I think this format has gained a kind of different significance. It's also related to the internal dynamics among the 5 Central Asian countries, right? And we see a bit more cooperative relationship between the 5 Central Asian countries themselves. And then when you have this cooperation internally within the region, it's easier for these 5 countries to talk together to other external actors.
What's more, by coming together, the 5 countries increase their collective bargaining power. External partners are compelled to consider the interests of the entire region, rather than playing on divisions between capitals. At the same time, experts caution against overestimating the unity this format implies. C5+ does not have a single decision-making body, and each country retains full sovereignty and its own national agenda.
So here we're not talking about Central Asia becoming one geopolitical bloc or political economic bloc, right? So we are not at that level. So then there's a question whether we will be at that level anytime soon. So here we are mostly talking about kind of discussing the issues where we have common interests, right? Definitely 5 Central Asian countries, they have their own national agendas, they have their own national interests. Sometimes those interests compete with each other. And sometimes Central Asian countries compete for the external actors' attention, investments, trade, and so on and so forth. It's kind of very kind of logical stuff.
Each global power approached the format in its own way. According to experts, the European Union remains the most consistent partner. In 2023, Central Asian leaders held a summit with the European Council President Charles Michel, and in April 2025, EU heads Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa visited the region. Germany, as another example, took the lead by launching its own C5+1 meetings. Former Chancellor Olaf Scholz hosted the region's leader in Berlin in 2023 and followed up with a return summit in Astana in 2024. Relations with another major player, China, however, are developing a bit differently, Mr. Arinov adds.
China also probably still prefers bilateral relations when it comes to promoting its agenda, because it's easier for China to work as a individual with each country rather than with the region as a whole. But again, as I mentioned, there are issues, there are spheres, fields where Central Asian countries individually cannot do much, cannot offer much to other external players. In that sense, they have to come together.
All of this points to one clear trend. Regional diplomacy in Central Asia is becoming increasingly collective. The C5+ format is not an alliance, it's a platform, but with every summit that platform grows stronger. One thing is already clear: without a unified Central Asian voice, it's becoming impossible to address the key questions of security, economic development and the future of Eurasia. Daurian Asagulov, New Time. And now it's time for Central Asia in Focus, our weekly dive into the news topics shaping this region. And this week we're talking about borders, cooperation and even space. Joining me now is our political expert Ozhet Shigirbayev. Ozhet, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Daurian. Great to be here.
Let's begin with a story that at first glance might sound tense, but is in fact a breakthrough. Kyrgyzstan has begun installing barbed wire along its border with Tajikistan. But this isn't about conflict. It's about clarity. The two countries have finally agreed on where the borders lies after decades of disputes. Ozhet, how significant is this moment and what does it mean for a long-term peace in the Fergana Valley?
Well, yes, it's quite important. The installation of barbed wire on the border refers to the physical arrangement of a state border. This is done for several purposes. First of all, it's making the state borderline visually and physically fixing the territory of the state. Secondly, it's done for strengthening the border, and finally ensuring security, especially relevant in border areas where conflicts or incidents have occurred in the past.
Thank you very much, Ozhet. We're looking forward to the details of this and other stories in your segment. Over to you.
Thanks, Daurian. I'm ready to present my top 5 news stories from Central Asia just in a few moments. Kyrgyzstan will supply 600 million cubic meters of water to Kazakhstan during the irrigation season. Since the start of the season, 45 million cubic meters have already been delivered. Starting in the late April, the Kyrgyz Republic will send an additional 400 million cubic meters via the Talas River and 180 million cubic meters via the Shu River. The water will be used to irrigate agricultural fields in the Jambul region. As noted by Kazakhstan's Minister of Water Resources in 2024, the country is successfully ensuring full irrigation water supply for farmers in the Jambul region. In particular, Kazakhstan received 418 million cubic meters via the Talas River, exceeding the initially forecasted 380 million. Meanwhile, 165.3 million cubic meters were received from the Shu River, 29.7 million more than the previous year. Uzbekistan's Space Research and Technology Agency is in talks with its counterparts from other Central Asian nations to launch a regional program focused on water resource monitoring and management. Muhyiddin Ibragimov, deputy head of the Uzbek Space Agency, noted that the 5 countries of the region rely on just 2 major rivers, the Amudarya and the Sirdarya. Uzbek Space is also working to establish strong ties with the Turkic-speaking countries. Kyrgyzstan begins fencing border with Tajikistan using barbed wire. Construction has commenced in Kyrgyzstan's Batken region, with a starting point marked at a strategically important location, the junction of the borders of Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. The launch ceremony was attended virtually by Deputy Chairman of the Cabinet of Ministers and Head of the State Committee for National Security, Mr. Kamchibek Tashiyev. A field camp has been set up in the border area with specialized equipment delivered and conditions created for the accommodation and service of military personnel. At the first stage, a barbed wire fence will be installed along a 420-kilometer section of the border. The work is expected to be completed by the end of this year. During the visit of Kazakhstan's Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of National Economy, Sergey Zhumangarin, to Afghanistan, a protocol of intent was signed, confirming interest in participating in the construction of the Turgundi-Gerat-Kandahar Spinball Duck Railway. At this stage, the project has not entered to the construction phase. According to the protocol, the parties have agreed to explore the possibility of establishing a joint venture between the railway authorities of Kazakhstan, Afghanistan and Turkmenistan. This joint venture would operate under the jurisdiction of Astana International Financial Center. No timeline has been set for this preliminary study. If the parties reach a positive outcome, the next step could be the signing of a cooperation agreement in the field of transport and logistics. This agreement would define the start of construction of the Turgundi-Gerat section of the railway, along with the necessary infrastructure and a transport and logistics hub in Gerat. The OECD has called for increased attention to the decarbonization of the transport sector in Central Asia. This was stated by Celeste Laporte Talamon, economic analyst of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, during the regional meeting of National Trade Facilitation Committees of Central Asia, which was held on April 25. According to Talamon, sustainable development in the region requires greater emphasis on reducing transport-related emissions, particularly through the integration of renewable energy sources into infrastructure projects. She also pointed out that one of the major challenges is the rapid deterioration of road networks due to overloaded vehicles. In addition, Kyrgyzstan currently lacks fuel quality standards, leading to under-regulated emissions from road transport. The economists suggested that governments could consider introducing policy incentives, such as phasing out subsidies for low-quality fuels, offering tax breaks for the import and distributing of high-quality fuels, and providing financial support to refineries for modernization aimed at producing cleaner fuel. That's all from my part, Dorian. Giving the floor back to you.
Thank you very much. It was our political expert, Ozhet Shigirbayev. The United States remains committed to Kazakhstan's sovereignty and supports its multi-vector foreign policy, said Deborah Robinson, chargé d'affaires of the U.S. mission to Kazakhstan, in her exclusive interview with New Time. The American diplomat emphasized Washington's interest in deepening trade and security ties with Central Asia, including investment in Kazakhstan's rare earth sector. But how does this position align with America's growing protectionist policies and rising tariffs on Kazakh exports? Is the US competing with Russia and China for influence in the region? To find out, watch the full interview on our YouTube channel. But first, here are the highlights of our conversation with Madame Chargé. So how does US see its role in Central Asian region? I mean, is it about competing with China and Russia, or is it building a distinct, like, independent agenda?
Yeah, that's a good question. And having spent quite a bit of time in the region, this is something that I am often asked. And I would say it's not about competing with any other country here in Central Asia. It's about representing American interests and ensuring that we are working together to build strong partnerships in areas of mutual interest. The United States has been involved in Central Asia for quite some time, and we are committed to having a strong partnership. We believe that Central Asia should be a strong integrated region that can work together with the United States. As I mentioned, 10 years ago, it's actually the 10th anniversary of the United States Central Asia C5+1 diplomatic platform partnership, and this is a partnership that Secretary Rubio has said is a mechanism to make a more peaceful and prosperous Central Asia. So that's what we want to see. We want to work together with our Central Asia partners for that. And beyond regional integration, though, we encourage education, English learning education, tech partnerships, security partnerships, and educational exchanges, and other programs that we think work to our mutual benefit. So we think we have a unique role to play here in Central Asia, and we want to be a strong partner for the mutual benefit of the region and the United States.
Talking precisely about US-Kazakhstan relations, how did it evolve over the past decades, in your opinion?
Yeah, you know, Kazakhstan's been a reliable partner and a key partner for the United States since independence, you know, over 30 years ago. And I guess to say if there's been an evolution in Washington's thinking on Kazakhstan, it is just that Kazakhstan has become a stronger partner, and one in where we continue to uncover new areas of mutual interest. And I think those interests lie in many areas. I would say bilateral US-Kazakhstan trade and investment, critical minerals and mining, energy, infrastructure, and other areas where we have mutual interests. And I think we'll continue to look forward. We continue to look forward to working with Kazakhstan to increase our ties and to work together in areas that make both of our countries safer, secure, safer, stronger, and more prosperous.
We see that now it's pretty turbulent times. We see a lot of polarization, confrontations, wars. What is the US message to Kazakhstan? Is it pick a side or stay neutral?
The United States won't ask Kazakhstan to choose sides. We welcome Kazakhstan's multi-vector foreign policy. We, the United States, we are committed to supporting Kazakhstan's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. And that's a message that Secretary Rubio conveyed to Foreign Minister Nurtlu in their phone conversation here just a couple weeks ago. And I think that's one of the things that we would say is that we encourage Kazakhstan to have diversified and balanced international relations and to have a strong relationship with the United States. And we see those two things as not mutually exclusive, but mutually inclusive, actually.
Talking about supporting sovereignty and multi-vectoral policy, how does it look in practice?
How does multi-vector foreign policy look in practice?
I mean, support from the U.S.
Oh, support from the U.S. Well, I think that we are looking for areas consistently with Kazakhstan, areas where we can work together. And I mentioned some of those fields here earlier. And I think that that's what we want to do is to identify those areas where they are mutually beneficial, and then create atmospheres where we can then work together to gain those opportunities and to fulfill those opportunities for both our people, our companies, our governments, you know, kind of across all of those areas. Those are ways that we want to cooperate in order to strengthen our bilateral relationship.
Let us move to another topic,
okay.
The topic of trade and tariffs.
Okay.
So my first question would be, what is U.S. long-term strategy on tariffs? I mean, is Washington truly ready to like restructure global trade, or what is it?
Well, I think the White House is looking to recalibrate international trade to ensure that it's fair and balanced and that it protects American interests, American people, American companies, our industrial base, and our national security. And the United States welcomes trading partners who align with our efforts to create fair and balanced trade atmospheres between countries. And the United States is doing this in order to address the imbalances and to try to make the market environment more predictable and more transparent. And that in the long term is better for everyone. It creates an environment in where investors can feel like they are safe in investing and where companies want to work. And so I think the White House is looking at holistically at trade imbalances and trying to make them more fair and even-handed.
But how could it affect the economic ties with Kazakhstan and the investment environment here?
Right. I would say I think it's important to note that most of the trade between Kazakhstan and the United States is in categories that are exempt from tariffs. So that's important to know. But I think that nonetheless, we would encourage Kazakhstan to continue to take steps to create an atmosphere here to align with international best practices in trade. And in doing so, that will attract more American investors and more business. American businesses want to know that they're going into a place where their investments will be protected. And I think that that's part of what the White House is trying to do when it's addressing some of these trade imbalances, is to make sure that there's a level playing field for all companies, but obviously from our point of view for American companies.
But still, we have like the highest tariffs among all Central Asian countries, 27%. What is the reason behind this?
I think that it's just the matter of what the trade is between Kazakhstan and the United States. And it's the way that the White House looked at the numbers, and they looked at the trade imbalance, and it just means that the trade imbalance was more with Kazakhstan than it was with other countries in Central Asia, and the United States and the White House is seeking to right that balance.
One of the world's foremost experts on international relations, Yan Sueton, visited Astana this week to deliver a lecture hosted by the Kazakhstan Council on International Relations and the Kalam Media Project. Yan, the honorary dean at Tsinghua University and the founder of the Moral Realism School of Thought, was named one of the world's top 100 thinkers by Foreign Policy in 2008. In his remarks, he outlined how great powers shape global dynamics, not just through economic and military strength, but through ethical leadership and moral values. He also emphasized that Kazakhstan, as a middle power, plays a critical role in these regional dynamics. Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced a temporary ceasefire from midnight on May 7th to May 11th. In honor of the 80th anniversary of Victory Day, a date that marks the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in 1945. In his statement, Putin expressed Russia's readiness for peace talks without preconditions amid the ongoing war in Ukraine, calling on Kiev to also observe a pause in fighting during the historic holiday. However, he warned that any violations of the ceasefire would prompt an adequate and effective response from the Russian military, according to the official statement from the president's office. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has called on all 32 member states to commit more funding, equipment and political energy to the world's largest military alliance as the United States steps back from its traditional leadership role in European security. In a new Secretary-General's report, Rutte notes that NATO countries increased their defense spending by nearly 10.5% in 2024 compared to the previous year. 23 member states have now met the target of spending 2% of their GDP on defense. For years, defense budgets were barely discussed in many EU capitals, but now the time has changed. Mounting pressure from Washington, along with growing uncertainty over America's NATO commitments, has pushed European leaders to adopt an €800 billion rearmament plan this year. More on this in our next report. US President Donald Trump's demand that European allies raise military spending to 5% of GDP, more than double NATO's current target, is causing growing concern among European leaders. In Spain, officials have said that almost no country in the world can meet that demand. In 2024, Spain spent just 1.3% of its GDP on defense, the lowest among NATO members. But Europe may have little choice. Madrid has already announced plans to meet the 2% benchmark 4 years ahead of schedule by the end of this year.
España alcanzará.
Spain will reach 2% of its gross domestic product in security and defense this year, 2025. This requires an important additional investment of €10 billion beyond current allocations for these policies of defense and security.
The trend is clear. Europe, though reluctantly, is shifting toward accelerated rearmament. Brussels is now weighing collective solutions to help share the financial burden among EU members. One proposal, informally dubbed Rearm Europe, involves relaxing EU fiscal rules and issuing joint debt to unlock up to €800 billion for defense over 4 years. The idea is that a dedicated European defense fund could borrow from military spending without increasing the national debt of individual countries. It's a particularly appealing option for southern EU members with high debt levels. Italy, for example, with public debt exceeding 135% of GDP, is willing to raise its defense spending, but doing so would place a heavy strain on its economy, the experts stressed.
Clearly, Italy has planned to repay its public debt in the coming years. Therefore, if the budget needs to be adjusted to increase loans for defense spending, there may be concerns about the sustainability of Italy's public debt. This worry already exists within the Italian government, with Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni expressing significant worries about debt sustainability. Other ruling parties, such as the Lega Nord, have been greater doubts about the European defense plan.
However, not all European countries are pushing back against Donald Trump's call for higher defense spending. Lithuania, in fact, is fully on board and ready to go further than anyone else. Starting in 2026, the country plans to raise its defense budget to an unprecedented 5.5% of GDP. The Lithuanian defense minister has urged the EU to lift all the restrictions on borrowing for defense and to provide immediate grants to member states. She also expressed hope that NATO allies will agree on a new target of at least 4% of GDP during the upcoming NATO summit in The Hague in this June.
We need to pull our weight as Europe. Europe is financially not investing adequately in defense. When we look at the construction of NATO, when we look at economic capacity of United States and Europe, and then the percentage and the size of funds that are allocated for defense, Europe needs to do more. And this is not the matter of we need to do it now. We already needed to do it yesterday. We are basically late. So when we are sometimes critical of United States, I think that mirror is the best helper also to make certain conclusions about ourselves.
What if the US leaves NATO? In Germany, officials are already preparing for that possibility. President Frank-Walter Steinmeier said this week that Germany will take on a stronger military role within the alliance and boost its contribution to Europe's defense. Speaking at NATO's headquarters in Brussels to mark Germany's anniversary of joining the alliance, Steinmeier sought to reassure allies unsettled by what he called epochal geopolitical shifts. Under Berlin's new financial strategy, a €500 billion fund is being set up to modernize infrastructure, including defense. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte called Germany's plan remarkable.
Just recently, the German parliament changed the constitution to massively increase its defense spending. This is remarkable. Another clear demonstration of German leadership. There was a time when NATO wanted to keep the Germans down, as NATO's first Secretary General famously said. Not anymore. The Germans are up. And this is exactly what we need in the face of greater danger.
And yet, despite all the rhetoric, new data from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute reveals just how difficult it will be for Europe to stand on its own. Nearly two-thirds of all weapons purchased by European NATO members between 2020 and 2024 came from the United States. Still, times are changing, and for Europe, the era of minimal defense spending appears to be over. Daurian Isagulov, New Time. Global military spending has reached a record high. In 2024, the world spent $2.7 trillion on defense, a 9.4% increase from the previous year. These figures come from newly released report by Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI. The United States remains the largest spender with nearly $1 trillion, which makes up 37% of the world's total defense budget. Other top spenders include China, Russia, Germany and India. This sharp rise in spending is mostly due to ongoing conflicts, especially the war in Ukraine and renewed attacks in Gaza. NATO countries together spent $1.5 trillion or 55% of the global total. Some countries now spend a large part of their GDP on defense. They are Ukraine, Israel and Algeria. This increase in military budgets is affecting economies. Governments are reallocating funds from social programs, taking on debt and, in some cases, raising taxes. Overall, the use in military spending is driven by global insecurity, an arms race and active wars. This week, Kazakhstan celebrated the Day of Unity. In his congratulatory message, President Tokayev emphasized the deep significance of this day, highlighting how people from various ethnic backgrounds live together in Kazakhstan in an atmosphere of mutual understanding and respect. According to him, unity and solidarity have always been and will continue to be the core values and unwavering guiding principles of the entire state policy. Day of Unity is a tribute to the strength of more than 120 ethnic groups living together in peace across our country. The holiday highlights the nation's long-standing commitment to mutual understanding, respect and cultural harmony. Notably, this year also marks the 30th anniversary of the Assembly of the People of Kazakhstan, an institution devoted to promoting inter-ethnic unity through a network of 35 friendship houses across the country. Our reporter Balzhan Samigulina takes a closer look at how these diverse communities coexist and shares the story of an American family who has called Kazakhstan home for over 20 years.
Across Kazakhstan, the Day of Unity was celebrated in vibrant style, a nationwide tribute to the strength found in diversity. From bustling central squares to local community centers, the country came alive with concerts, sport tournaments, artisan markets and cultural exhibitions. In the capital Astana, the festive spirit took center stage at the Jastar Palace, where families gathered not just to celebrate, but to connect, exploring the music, cuisine and customs of the many ethnic groups who share one home under a common shanurag, the traditional Kazakh symbol of unity.
We cherish our history, culture and language, and here on the united land of Kazakhstan, the German community continues to thrive.
As visitors in Astana explored the exhibition celebrating Kazakhstan's national traditions, the festivities continued beyond the display halls. On stage, music and dance ensembles from across the country delivered a colorful spectacle, blending languages, movement and styles into one unified rhythm. It was a living portrait of Kazakhstan's multicultural spirit brought to life through song and dance, and met with heartfelt applause from a captivated crowd.
On May the 1st, as always, we are reminded that our strength lies in our unity. Kazakhstan is a multi-ethnic country where every group can proudly preserve its traditions, culture and language, and still feel completely at home.
Thus, Kazakhstan is a multinational country fostering harmony through its multiple friendship houses nationwide, creating a rich mosaic of cultures. But it's not just the country's diverse communities that make it unique, it's also a welcoming home for those who've made it their own. Among them is American Tirza Pishori, who moved to Astana with her husband back in 2001. Initially, they came to launch an international community development project as part of their research. But over the years, Kazakhstan has grown to be more than just a place of work. It's become their second home, and for some, even their first, embracing both them and their children.
I mean, they're American, but they grew up here, so their heart is very much in Central Asia. We're not planning to leave yet. Not yet. We don't know what we would do. We don't have a home in America anymore. I mean, we have family, but we haven't lived there in over 20 years, so this is home now.
Since settling in Astana, Tirza's life has been rooted in the heart of the city, where she raises 3 children and plays an active role in community initiatives. Alongside her husband, she leads the local Hata branch, managing projects that assist those battling addiction and promoting violence-based education and health awareness. For Tirza, living in a country rich in cultural diversity has been a rewarding experience, but perhaps the most important key to truly understanding Kazakhstan culture has been mastering the Kazakh language.
We have really come to love Kazakhstan and Kazakh people since we speak Kazakh. As soon as we speak Kazakh, their hearts open up. And so we've been very accepted, very welcomed in Kazakhstan. We've spent many times in people's homes, and they're very hospitable, very friendly and welcoming. And we are very thankful that our children have been able to grow up not just with American culture, which we do have still in our home, but also with Kazakh culture, and so they're more balanced with having a broader worldview.
According to recent social studies, over 97% of Kazakh citizens consider the country's inter-ethnic relations to be stable and positive. Today, Kazakhstan is home to over 120 ethnic groups, all coexisting in peace and harmony. And as the country continues to grow, this trend of unity shows no signs of slowing down. Baljan Samigulna, Nurbalat Iskirbekov, New Time.
They are hospitable and kind people. That's how Hungarian traveler and scholar Armin Vamberi described the Kazakhs back in the 19th century. With admiration, he noted their deep-rooted traditions, respect for women, and the unique national games that shaped their culture. Now his writings and rare photographs are part of a new exhibition at Maksut Narikbayev University in partnership with the Embassy of Hungary. At the presentation, speakers underlined the power of such projects to build cultural dialogue and explore the shared threads of our historical heritage.
Well, his work is verbatimly play a very important role in introducing to the broader Hungarian public Central Asia. But that was back in the 19th century, so you can imagine that he had really a pioneering role. That means he was really one of the very first ones who established direct contact between the Hungarian broader public, scientific world, and Central Asia.
Western scholars, Western travelers do collected a lot of evidence on Kazakhstan, a lot of photo materials. Like we also demonstrate some photos from National Geographic Archives of 100+ years old. It is quite unusual for us because now we try to visualize our own history, to bring more faces, to bring more pictures, to give a clear understanding for the local community here in Kazakhstan on how Kazakhs was look like at that time.
That's it for today. All the main news about Kazakhstan and Central Asia you can find here. More special projects about our country you can also watch on Silkway TV channel. So stay tuned and see you next week.